unique window into El Salvador in the 80s, which at the same moment gave us a unique window into the world that the Jesuits faced in El Salvador, which also, by the way, makes us appreciate all the more that the Jesuits stood up to the brutality, the inhumanity, the injustice, the fear, the intimidation. After seeing Innocent Voices, I was so grateful to this creative genius, because not only for us here in Scranton, but for so many around the world, he opened eyes. And for that, we love and respect and will always be grateful to Oscar Torres. Not only for that reason, Oscar continues to tell stories that heal. And as you follow his career, and we certainly intend to, his stories are all about healing the human spirit. Whether it's a blockbuster he had last year that was the highest grossing Latin film, without instructions, what was it? Instructions not included. Or whether it's the short films that I show in class all the time, like En tus manos, or La vida no es igual. These are creative works of art. Brave Town comes out next year. Oscar's passion and purpose are inspirations for us all. And as we ponder the specialness of this week, let's give him all the credit in the world for being an example of answering those three questions that St. Ignatius told us to ponder at the foot of the cross, which are, what have we done for Christ in the world? What are we doing now? And most importantly, what should we be doing? And Oscar is a prime example of passion and purpose. And for that, Oscar, we thank you. Oscar Torres.
Thank you, Mom. If anybody knows, she's my adoptive mother. I'm gonna not use the mic. Is that okay? Because that's too constrictive. I tend to move a little bit. You know?
The tape will lose the tape.
No. This is if you guys can hear me. Everybody hear me?
Well, the camera can hear you.
Oh, you're the camera.
The camera can't hear.
Never mind. All right, I gotta stay here, guys. Sorry. Can I move it? Okay, here we go. Hello. Hi. So, thank you, Marie, so much for that. It's kind of a hard act to follow after those words. But thank you. I really appreciate you thinking of me that way in my career so far. Hopefully there's more to come, God willing. But so far, you know, when I say we, it's because I don't do what I do alone. It's always, there's a team behind, right? There's obviously my family, and then there comes the team that we are very fortunate and lucky to put together for every project that we do and every endeavor we set ourselves out to. And in this case, for Innocent and Innocent Voices, and I've been telling the students a story, and I think it's a good place to tell the story, because what you guys do here, what you guys are about in regards to my own country, it's probably the most special place where I can come and not only be a part of this week and show this film that is about our lives, the lives of not just my family, but my country, my people. And you guys have been there and continue to be there for us. And I will give you an example. I was at a dinner that a fundraiser for the FIDF, the Friends of Israel, about 2 weeks ago, which is it's held in Hollywood and in Los Angeles. And the big guys are there. Big. When I talk about big, is that night they raised $35 million in 2 hours. That's how big they are. And the creator of Oracle was there, donated $10 million. And a whole bunch of other people. The owner of Univision, Saban, who's Jewish, he donated, between him and his family, like $12 million, something like that. So anyway, I was there during that dinner and seeing the love that they have for their people, the soldiers, right? That have, especially this last year, who had it really rough. And they raised all this money to give chances, to give scholarships, to give treatments, to take care of the families that are left behind. That they use that money directly. All of it goes to the families and the soldiers and the hospitals and all the stuff. So when I was seeing that, bless you, when I was seeing that, it got me thinking, and being here today is a very similar feeling that there are people who care. And believe it or not, when you're in the middle of that, and I thought about it when I was sitting at the dinner, and I wish I would have been able to express it, but I'm a guest. I really don't know what's happening. It's my first year there, and but I was thinking about this. When you're in the middle of a conflict like El Salvador had, and I was in the middle of the whole thing at 12 years old, I would sit there sometimes in the middle of the night, right? We're surrounded by nothing but violence sometimes. And there are moments of peace. And you look up to the sky, because that's usually where you look for answers or help. And you will hope and think and pray, I guess, in a 12-year-old way. You pray for somebody. You pray for some angel that would appear and that would come and save the day. And to me, your school is part of that. You guys are part of the angels. You guys are part of the prayers answered, because to know that people care, it gives you a sense of belonging and it gives you a sense of worth. And believe me, it makes a huge difference in those people whose lives you touch, whether they tell you directly or not. I've been fortunate enough to be able to witness the change and the save of lives because of the work that I do, because I cared enough to not only heal myself, but to actually take it a little bit step forward and say, okay, I got what I needed. I'm done with my healing now. What can I do more of? How much can I give? Now I have it. I have it to give because I gave it to myself. And I took the moment and the time to do that, to recharge. Now I can give it. So I've been blessed enough to be able to, I've been approached by people whose lives we've saved literally because of one film, for example. So example, a 17-year-old, I will give this example. There's two examples that I love in the path that we followed. One is a 17-year-old boy in Mexico City who said to us, ran into us at the airport, recognized us, and he said, he was crying, his eyes out, and then finally after we got him down from the ground, him and his father were there, and he says, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And he says, I want to thank you because you saved my life. And the director, Luis, said, how do we do that? He says, well, I was about to commit suicide when I saw your film. My friends dragged me to the movie theater to see it. And when I walked out of there, I realized that my tragedies were not that tragic. And that kid was on his way to the University of Texas to study film. He was on his first semester. He decided to make movies for a living because he saw what that could do for him. He wanted to do the same for others. Another example, we were in Berlin, and it's a 14-year-old, it was a young audience, there were two screenings. That one screening that brought a whole bunch of kids from different schools, and there's a 14-year-old there, blonde, blue-eyed kid, German, taller than me. And he stood up, we were on the stage, the director and I, and he says in a heavy accent, he says, I want to thank you guys for making this film. Because, he says, I carry in my blood one of the greatest atrocities ever committed against the human race. And watching this film makes me realize that the peace that we now live in, it's a privilege, and that we have to fight for it. This is a 14-year-old boy expressing himself this way. Can you believe the amount of weight that he carries on his shoulders? And the fact that we were able to be there for that moment in time, where he was able to express something that connected us. A kid from El Salvador connected to a kid from Germany, right? Who had nothing to do with what he speaks about. It's a gift. It's gifts that you receive more than you give, and you guys are a representation of that. You truly do give so much more than I'm sure you receive. But in a way, it's always cyclical, right? You get it back. You receive it tenfold. Even if you don't see it or you don't feel it, the blessings in your life are a reflection of the blessings you give away. So I'm very grateful to be here, very, very, very just happy and enjoy every time. This is my third time here. Marie won't leave me alone, so I just I give in, And now Mike has become an ally to that. Between Marie and Mike, as my email just keeps filling up, It's like, when are you coming? But I'm very thankful to both of you guys. They take care of me like I'm their kid here, And I really appreciate it. And I've come to, like I said, I love you so much because you really do go out of your way to make me feel like, I belong here. So thank you. And as far as, the organization and this week, it truly is, for me, a representation of that, the memory. Now, I say this because of out of experience, right? And this is history proven. Spielberg continues to make films about the Holocaust because I think he knows, and people like him know, that it's very important to keep the memory alive The memory is not, it's not about ego, and it's not about anything else but to remind ourselves that tragedy exists in this world, and that if we're not conscious enough, we're not educated enough, we're not present enough, if we forget, the chance that it will happen again is too present. And it's a dangerous thing to forget, right? So this week is about that. And you guys, the fact that you remember your comrades and your colleagues and your partners in this journey, it's a wonderful thing for my country as well, and for the world itself, because it makes a huge difference that people remember the bad things too. Because trust me, we're human beings, we're resilient in that sense. We're not gonna let it happen again. And this is one place where voices are raised. But more importantly, actions are taken. And that to me is everything. I try to live my life that way. I can talk the talk. Hollywood is known for that. But I like to walk the walk. My best friends, who are two my business partners, are very successful as well because they do the same thing, and that's the reason why we could have connected, why God brought us together. These guys walk the walk, and we talk about that all the time. Okay, guys, I have a text from yesterday. He says, enough talking, literally, because we're discussing something, and then we're like going to figure out how to do it. It's like, yeah, but we've been talking for about a week about it. It's like, okay, enough talking. And then now, the next day, just this morning, everybody's acting. And we're out there, and we're doing, and we're sending, and we're approaching, and we're calling, and we're emailing. So to me, to walk the walk is a courageous act. It's always the most courageous act. And you guys are a representation of that. This is why we're here. This is why these buildings exist. And why lives are being saved and changed in my country. And I'm so grateful for that. I try to get involved and be involved as much as I can. I work a lot with anti-gang violence in El Salvador and in Los Angeles. I try to be, a mentor if I can, and a voice if I can. Fortunately and luckily for me, that this film has come to represent some sort of hope, I guess, and an example of what can be done. I was lucky, and I always repeat that because so many of my friends and people that I know didn't turn out to be this way, didn't have the opportunities. And they unfortunately got, including family members, one of my favorite uncles, who's only 4 years older than me, he just got beaten to death in El Salvador about 7 months ago. Because he after the war, he developed schizophrenia, and he went into the really heavy drugs, and then he started selling them, and he got involved with the wrong people, and then he ended up getting killed because of it. So that's why I continue to say I'm lucky, I'm fortunate, because me and him had the same, we were completely the same, 4 years apart. He's the one who actually brought me into the guerrilla movement, because he started going to those things before I did, and I used to kind of follow his steps, But unfortunately, he didn't handle, I guess, the way that I was able to handle, and he wasn't lucky enough to be sent away, And then the other thing that you guys deal with, I know that you just had a trip to the border in October, right? You guys are very present in that world. It's very important too, because it's amazing what happens when there's a separation, when there's a division of family, the damage and the trauma that goes with it. 20 years later, I'm still dealing with that in this present life. It took me about 8 years to call my mom again. My mom sent me away for my safety, to save my life. Yet, for some reason, a 13-year-old's mind used it as an abandonment of some sort. And so when my mom got to Los Angeles for the first time, and I just couldn't see her as my mom, there was this unspeakable resentment that I'm not an expert, most of us don't have the education or the psychology behind it, and that you don't really understand what your behavior is about. But I used to remember call my mom lady, señora, like for the longest time. About 8 years it took me to start calling her mom again. I read a book called Enrique's Journey, which we're turning into a film as well. It talks about that. And that's when I read that book, I realized that I'm not alone, that there's so many kids and children, there's so many family members that separate, and then when they try to work things out and come together, it's almost an impossibility. It's such a challenge. So to have people that care, that know, they're educated enough to approach it and say, hey, listen, there might be a reason for this. There might be a reason why you bring in part of your damaging and just the hurting part of your culture to where you are now. And there's a way to disconnect, and there's a way to adapt where you are now and not have to work in the same way you were, but you have to understand why. And that's what I deal with the kids in LA and the organizations that are anti-gun violence and in prevention. We talk about that. We deal, and we go deep into why they may be doing what they're doing. you know. So the fact that you guys are involved with that and going out there and trying to figure out what's going on and why this is happening, you understand why it's happening. And we need to just educate the rest of the planet, and especially this country, on why, for example, the immigration surge is happening right now, especially with the young kids. The complete and direct result of war. And it's, you know, I guess it's a job in a way, or at least we make it our responsibility to help educate and spread the light that you guys are already living in. So anyway, I don't know if anybody wants to ask anything, or if you guys have any questions about either Innocent Voices or anything else, and we'd love to answer. I think we have a little bit of time, and if not, I can keep talking. You know, I talk. Like her, Mike's class this morning, we were in the class, and it was early, man. It was 9 a.m. Nobody wanted to talk. Like, oh, leave us alone, man. And yeah, I filled up the 50 minutes, right? Yeah, pretty much. No questions. So your class was more awake, Marie. Yeah, they actually had questions. That was cool. Take a little break. Yeah, but anyway, if not, then I just want to say thank you. Really, well, we got one.
Yeah, how was life in El Salvador now? You were there a few years ago, 8 years ago.
8 years ago?
How was it included in those 8 years?
Oof, it depends on who you ask and where you go, truly. I was there 2 years ago. I was also very lucky, fortunate enough that the place where I grew up, which is Cuscatancingo, which is in the northern part of San Salvador, and the government, the Salvadorian government, recognized me as a legitimate son thing. And then so I didn't know what that was until that day I went. So they gave me this thing and this beautiful ceremony, all these things. I hadn't been there, I hadn't gone back since the premiere of the film, because we made a lot of enemies with this movie, especially the right-wing government was still in charge at the time. So we got death threats, all that stuff, right? The whole package, it was crazy. But I hadn't come back, and I went back 2 years ago, and you know, it was funny because I know that the gang violence is very present. Like I said, my uncle just got killed by that. But there's also this sense of hope that I saw. There was a lot of youth that came to the event. And they have like a lot of programs for the youth in the place, especially in that town where I grew up, you know, which didn't exist, obviously, when I was there because there was war. None of that happened. But now there's also some organizations. They have art. They have like a cappella group there. They have like this youth gatherings. So they're the alcalde from the town. He's very involved with the youth, which is a really wonderful thing to see. Because most people don't, you know, they get elected and they're like, okay, how do I make money here? You know, this guy he's a doctor, and he's really involved with it. I was surprised how much involvement he had with the youth and how he just brought them. They run the whole project, the whole event where I was a part of. They ran the whole thing. Kids from like 16 to 24, they were there, and they were the ones organizing, and they were the ones doing it, and they just really wonderful. So, if you ask me, there was a sense of hope that I hadn't seen. I didn't see it when I went to the show Innocent Voices, but I felt it this time. Yeah, so it was a very good feeling. Aside from all the violence, aside from whatever's happening, you know, Latin America, unfortunately, just like what's happening in Mexico right now, the 3 states, and I was telling this in the last class, what people in the media don't realize, because we're not being sold that region, Guerrero and Oaxaca and Chiapas, they've always had problems. There's always this educators against the police problems. They've had them for years. It's a generational thing. And yet just know, because now we have access to news, and it's actually a big thing, obviously, bigger than, but they're not really telling you the whole story. I went to San Miguel Allende in Mexico 2 weeks ago, a week ago I was there, scouting for a film that we're going to do next year. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. If you please have a chance to go. San Miguel Allende is in Guanajuato. It's one of the safest places you'll ever go, ever. The whole town is basically owned by Americans, Europeans, and Canadians. And it's a national treasure. They can't touch the town the way they have to. You can leave it the way it is and protect it. And you go there and you feel like, oh my God, this is magic. It's alive. You feel it. You breathe it. And I was there and I asked the taxi driver. I said, "So what do you guys think about this whole, 43 thing?" He's like, "What?" Like, "Yeah, about this whole student." He's like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that." Something like that. That's as far as he got, because people are not really truly involved with so much with the media as we are here. Mexico City, there are protests and all stuff, but that's always political moves as well. So it's always, you have to be careful on how you buy the stuff, right? The same as my country, they always kind of like make it bigger. But if you go to the small places, at least in my town, when I was there 2 years ago, there was a sense of hope, like I said, that I hadn't felt So that's how I see it. There's very hopeful, yeah, of course. So anybody else want to ask anything else? Yes, sir.
In Innocent Voices, you use humor to help us get in touch with our humanity and then have the courage to face horrors. And it seems like that's not just a movie technique, but it's something you feel more deeply. Can you speak about that?
To use a humor? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking
You
about.
never don't.
No,
Humor, humor.
I'm serious. Come on. If you think I'm saying funny things, I think you're in the wrong room right now. Okay. So, no, you know, I was talking about it too in the classes. It's like life is not a flat line, man. You know, I gave the example of when you stump a toe, you cry and laugh at the same time, right? Or a kid, my little nephew, he cries and then I find a way to make him laugh. He's got tears rolling down his face, but he's laughing already. So it's an up and down thing. It's not a flat line. To me, telling stories, even hard ones, the greatest example is Life is Beautiful. You know, there's a story about the Holocaust, which it is the greatest tragedy in the history of the world to me. Yet he found a magical way to say it so that you can still laugh and you can still enjoy, you can still watch it. But he never once lost focus on what that was, you know. And that's for me to tell a story to me. It's like that. I have to tell stories that I still want people to come into the theaters or sit down in front of the television sets and watch something, learn something, educate them about something, educate us about something. But you say it in a way that, you know, that you can still laugh about it and you can still live through it. And in war, you find love and humor a big tool in order to survive emotionally and I guess psychologically. It's probably a survival mode thing. But we used to find humor in all the little things. I was telling the class earlier today, you know, my sister used to fart when she was little. You know, it's just part of her nervous system. She used to just not be able to handle it and she like, let go. But that used to happen all the time. That happened underneath the beds, and that was the funniest part. We didn't do it in the movie, but we were underneath the beds, and there were bullets flying. You can't get out, man. You can't escape you gotta smell it. I mean, there's no way around it. And we used to laugh in them because we used to, like, you know, just try to cover ourselves so much that it became funny. And then you got 3 kids underneath the beds. Of course they're gonna find it funny, you know, because we didn't really understand so much of the danger and that the bullets are still flying by. And so there was a lot of things that you find. My uncle, who we find in the street, you know, pretending to be dead, his friends are making money off of him because that was a very common thing where we find dead bodies in the streets and the family members would put a little can to put money into so they can bury them, you know. And everybody's poor, everybody needs to help each other out. And his friends, his drunk friends, figure out a way to make money off of his passing out in the middle of the street. So they would put a flower around him and a little can, and then people would come in and put money thinking he was dead. And me and my mom found him there. And of course he wasn't dead, he was just passed out. And my mom woke him up and slapped the heck out of him, and that was, to us, was very fun. This is one of the anecdotes we now tell when we get together as family, and we laugh our butts off, right? But we tend to, and it helps us to forget moments at a time how bad it was. Because sometimes if we really go deep on how bad it was, sometimes we're in the, you know, whenever we get together at my mom's house, we're there having food or whatever, she loves to cook for us. And all of a sudden, like we used to, and she doesn't do it anymore since Innocent Voices, since she saw this, since she's like been a part of this journey and this healing. But we used to sit there doing the thing, all of a sudden we hear crying coming from the kitchen. And then we look and it's my mom cooking and then just like bawling, just like with this, you know, overwhelming sentiment, and that's just like drowning. And it's those moments are part of our lives for the rest of our lives, right? They've diminished since then, which is wonderful. And our family, I've seen, has become a lot more joyful because of it, because we were able to talk about it. We were able to express, we were able to bring it out from wherever it was eating us alive, and we put it out to the world now, literally, completely naked, which is a very uncomfortable feeling, by the way, but so necessary too. And it is important. I tell the students this whenever I have a chance and they listen to me. It is such an important thing. Bravetown, that which showed last night, which just opens next year, it's about that. It's an American film, it's an American theme, it's a small town America, in a military town in America, but it's about communication, it's about expressing, it's about being able to just put it out of you and just say it. And say, okay, listen, I do have a problem, or listen, I do feel this way. there was this damage done to me. There was this trauma, and I say it, I have it in the movie, I used to say it all the time, and I put it in the film, that you don't have to have fought, you don't have to have lived a war to live at war. And we all live wars. We all have our battles inside, right? Our brains are pretty crazy and amazing at the same time. And we all fight against ourselves and about everybody else, with everybody else. And family, unfortunately, becomes that. To me, it is important to make peace at home so we can make peace in the world. And that's really what it comes down to. Inner peace means world peace. And I don't know how to live any differently now. So. But yes, humor should be a part of life, always, you know? Even if you don't find me funny, I don't care. Okay, see, that was funny.
Remind them, 6 o'clock tonight, everybody, 6 o'clock tonight.
6 o'clock tonight, we are raffling scarves. What are we doing tonight?
Raffling off Innocent Voices, no, we're not. The
Free food,
6 o'clock
free
tonight,
food.
We'll show Innocent Voices downstairs.
6 p.m., Innocent Voices tonight. If anybody has a chance to come, we'll have a Q&A afterwards. Q's and A's after the movie tend to be pretty awesome and really funny as well. So anyway, nothing further, I guess. Thank you so much, guys, for having me here, for the lunch and for your presence. Thank you. Appreciate it.